Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy speaking to you from Jerusalem, the capital of Israel, and I'm speaking to you on behalf of Brit-Am, Hebrew Nations, an organization that finds the lost 10 tribes now to be amongst Western peoples. We are continuing our study of the Book of Deuteronomy, in Hebrew Devarim. We are going according to the weekly portion that is read out in Jewish synagogues every week, and this present portion is called D6a, in Hebrew, go out, or D6a, when you go out, and it literally a literal translation of this expression is when you go out, and it derives from the first verse of this portion, which it says when you go out to war. This portion extends from Deuteronomy 21:10 to Deuteronomy 25 verse 19, and it is an interesting portion. It concerns things of going out to war, of captured women, of rape, and judgments, and so on. And it brings up some very vital points in jurisprudence and in general philosophy. And so we're going to give a few outlines. We're going to outline a few salient points in this portion and discuss them very briefly. And I think if you listen to it, you will be interested. You will find it interesting because the subject matter is such. It says when you go out, Deuteronomy 21:10, when you go out to war against your enemies and the Lord your God hands them over to you and you take them captive. So the great commentator Rashi pointed out that when you go to war against your enemies, you should remember that is what they are. They are your enemies. They're not your brothers. They're not people who have mercy upon you. They are people who will kill you, destroy you, exterminate you. As the Germans tried to do to the Jews in World War II, and as the Arabs want to do now to the Israelis. And they will do this in the cruelest and most sadistic manner possible. They are against you. They are your enemies. Remember that when you go out to war against your enemies, you're going out to war against your enemies, against people who want to destroy you, destroy your family, and do the most extreme bad and evil things to you that they possibly can. And so they are your enemies, and remember who you are fighting against. Do not make mistakes. Do not be misled. And then it goes on, and we're just speaking in biblical times, Deuteronomy 21:11. Suppose you see among the captives a beautiful woman whom you desire and want to marry. You saw a woman at that time, you desired her. Amongst the captives, you could forcibly marry her. You could take her to your wife. And so there are a few things from this. One thing is the racial point of view. We are not commanded to go to war against people who are racially homogeneous with us. We could go to war against our enemies, against other peoples who are different from us, people who look different from us, different ethnic origins. But nevertheless, we were permitted to marry captive women from our enemies. So the Bible is not taking a racist stand. You can take another woman from somewhere else and you can marry her. We have an article on this called The Black Woman, because the wife of Moses was also very dark and considered black, as we have discussed, and that God expressed his displeasure of racial prejudice. Racial prejudice is forbidden in the Bible. And even though the Bible does want ethnic cohesion, it wants the Israelites to stick together. He wants the Israelites to be one people. So we have these two contradictory aspects, we could say. These two contradictory principles. On the one hand, the Bible is against racial prejudice, is against any kind of prejudice in effect. But it is against racial prejudice. It is for ethnic cohesion. As much as possible, a person should marry within his own, and people should stick together. And Israelites especially should stick together, stay with other Israelites. In this case of the captive woman, the Ora Haim, a commentary in 1600, 1743, died, but he of a a commentary known as Orahaim. He was born in Morocco, but he lived in Jerusalem. And he says, in this case, a person going out to war and seeing a captive woman whom he wished to marry her. So then this woman had like an Israelite, a spark of Israelite in there, and she had something in her soul that was of Israelite potential that needed to be redeemed, and that is why the person had instinctively understood that he should marry this woman. And he goes on and explains it, and this is interesting. It's worth taking into consideration. And another point is that the sages said that this whole thing about the captive woman was only against the evil impulse, because it was accepted in those times. It is still even accepted today amongst the Muslims. It is accepted today amongst most peoples in a de facto sense. It is accepted that when you conquer a country in war, the women are there for the taking. And it's also known that in warfare, normal inhibitions are relaxed. They often disappear, both from the point of view of the conquerors and from the point of view of the conquered. And there's a great deal of temptation, and stories from World War II also corroborate this observation. And so the Bible, according to the sages, was coped with the situation not by absolutely forbidding a person to take a woman from amongst the peoples who had been conquered, not absolutely forbidding it, but wrapping it up in so many inhibitions and prohibitions and regulations as to make it difficult. And this incidentally reminds one of Israeli bureaucracy today. All their rules and regulations about doing anything. They don't make life impossible, they make it difficult. So anyway, getting back to the captured woman. This would be Israelite male lover boy. He had to go through a whole rigmarole of doing this and doing that, and had to take responsibility for his captive. And so the end result of all this would be that only exceptional cases would get through, would go ahead with the whole thing. But if they did go ahead and they did get married, so the woman was considered an Israelite, she had the full rights of an Israelite, and if after marriage the husband decided that the woman did not meet his liking, he could divorce her, but he had to do so with respect. He had to treat her with respect. The woman had to be treated with respect and could not be simply cast away or given to another. She could go free and be looked after. And so too, if a person, in those days men had, in some cases, more than one woman. If a person had several sons, even from different women, and he preferred one to another, he could not discriminate against that whom he preferred when it came to inheritance. The firstborn son, no matter which of the woman he was born to, no matter how the father felt about it, the firstborn son, the son who was firstborn had to receive a double portion. He would receive a double portion no matter what, and the other sons would each receive a single portion. So the firstborn wasn't primogenitor. The firstborn son didn't receive everything, as is the case, or used to be the case in most of England. The firstborn son would receive a double portion, and the other sons would each receive a portion. So say we had three sons, and so we're talking about land. The land would be divided up into 4 portions, 3 sons for 4 portions. The firstborn takes 2 portions, and the other 2 sons get a portion each. And so too, section talks about a rebellious son who, in certain circumstances, under very peculiar and particular circumstances, could be put to death. The rebellious son could be put to death, and under certain conditions. But the sages said that these conditions were so complicated that they doubted very much if such a case had ever occurred, and that the whole portion was there for its educational purposes, as it says in Deuteronomy 21:22. So shall purge the evil from their midst, and all Israel will hear and be afraid. Another point that we should remember is that the Bible is a communal document. It is addressed to the people of Israel as a whole, all the laws and regulations that we say now were the responsibility of the whole community. For this reason, you had to have a central authority, a central religious authority that would decide matters in case of disputes or doubts as to what the law should be. And these laws had to be fulfilled, they had to be obeyed, as we saw in Deuteronomy chapter 17. And this is the basis of the oral tradition. The oral tradition is actually an explanation of the written law. And the two traditions, the written law and the oral tradition, came together and always existed side by side. They had to, because the written tradition cannot be into practice if it does not have some type of explanation telling us how it should be done, how it needed to be fulfilled. And our section goes on and tells us that a person who had committed a capital crime would be executed, and after he would be executed, his body would be hanged from a tree until evening. At evening, the body would be taken down and treated with respect. Also, we're told that lost property and livestock had to be looked after. When you found something that had gone lost, even someone's cow, someone's bull, someone's goat, whatever, you had to look after it and take care of it until you were able to return it to its owners. And these are very civilized, very advanced concepts, and even today we have not reached the same level as they then had. Another point that we are told that a woman should not wear a man's apparel. See Deuteronomy 22 verse 5, a woman should not wear a man's apparel, and nor shall a man put on a woman's garment. Whoever does such things is abhorrent to the Lord your God. Men should not wear women's clothes, and women should not wear men's clothes. This is a known perversion. It's called transvestism. It is forbidden. Transvestism is forbidden by the Bible. And but in some circles it's quite common. Dressing up as a woman is quite popular with entertainers, especially entertainers of children, but entertainers in general. And also mothers who, for a prank, sometimes entertain themselves by dressing up their male children, their boys, as girls. This happens, and at all events it is forbidden by the Bible, and it is strongly discouraged. It should be strongly discouraged, because a lot of psychological problems arise from this type of behaviour. Another point that the section talks about is about about roofs on houses. The roofs of houses in those days, most houses were flat. People used the roof for living purposes, as hanging out, washing, for curing, taking care of foods, treating certain foods on the roof. Also for entertaining their friends. People would often do this on the roof of the houses. In a hot climate, is probably quite relatively cool, exposed to the prevailing breezes and so on, and a roof of a house had to have a wall around it of a minimum height as a safety measure, in order that no one should fall off it. And another point, we are told that we should not plough with an ox and a donkey yoked together in Deuteronomy 22:10. The word translated as ox in Hebrew is from the Hebrew shor, meaning bull. So why I say this is because the word ox now it's an archaic word, but it's still prevalent in English language. In some cases it has the connotation of a steer, of a castrated bull. This is not so because the Israelites were forbidden to practice castration against their male animals. They would not have castrated their bulls. So it's simply a bull and an ass should not be yoked together, and apparently until recently, or maybe even still in their time, the Arabs sometimes did this. It was a known practice in the Middle East, because you had a donkey and you had a bull. A bull is strong, a donkey is less strong, it's weaker, and by yoking them together, you more or less get more out of the donkey, because the bull pulls him along or forces him to go faster than he otherwise would do. And the Torah forbids this practice. The Torah apparently is concerned with the sensitivity, and it is against cruelty to animals and cruelty to anyone. And this is worth bearing in mind. We're forbidden to wear clothes made out of wool and linen woven together. This is called shatners. Understand that actually most Scottish kilts in Scotland, originally they were cloaks. Nowadays they've been reduced to kilts, but they were cloaks made out of tartan, and they actually are made of a combination of wool and linen together, because the linen, the best linen incidentally, used to come from Ulster, from Northern Ireland, or also the Ulster's linen was also produced in Scotland. The combination of linen with wool has certain advantages. It makes the garment stronger. Also provides greater resilience, greater protection against water. Scotland is a cold and wet country. The wool provides heat. The wool is warm. It is warm and comfortable, but has a problem that it absorbs moisture. So the linen would counter this. But at all events, such practices, such combinations are forbidden for the Bible. And I suppose that Israelites who want, or people in Scotland who wanted to follow this law, would have to find some other solution. It was also preferable that a woman remain a virgin until marriage, and the regulations about this: someone who had intercourse with a betrothed woman, a woman who's engaged to another man, could be put to death. The woman also would be executed. See Deuteronomy 22, verse 22. If, however, the woman was raped, taken against her will, nothing would happen to her. See Deuteronomy 22, verse 26. This sounds obvious to us. It is obvious. Why should anything be done to her if she was not culpable, if she was not an active party in the action? But nevertheless, amongst certain people, certain European peoples, and also amongst Muslims, very often the woman, even if the woman is raped, the woman is considered the guilty participant, and even in Muslim law, in some circumstances, the woman may be punished and the men go free. A victim of rape amongst Muslims can be punished, and the men who raped her, nothing happens to them in certain circumstances amongst the Muslims, amongst the Arabs, in our time, in our day. And these are the people we're up against. These are the people we are fighting against. These are the people who want to, by force, impose their system of civilization, their laws over us. They are coming to civilize us, as if to say. If you wrote if this was fiction, it wouldn't be believed. This is the reality we're up against. This section, we should read it out because it has a few other points pertinent to our study. Deuteronomy 22, verses 25 to 27. It says, if the man meets the engaged woman in the open country, and the man seizes her and lies with her, then only the man who lay with her shall die. You shall do nothing to the young woman. The young woman has not committed an offence punishable by death, because this case is like that of someone who attacks and murders a neighbour. Since he found in the open country, the engaged woman may have cried for help, but there was no one to rescue her. So we see here, rape is compared to murder in biblical law. Rape is compared to murder, and if someone sees another man trying to rape a woman, he was permitted to take the life of the rapist or the potential rapist. This could be done, and it is legal, and in a de facto sense, it also applies in the state of Israel today. Wrong must be resisted as much as possible. At the least, dissatisfaction with wrongdoing needs to be made vehement and clear. The woman had to shout. A woman in such a situation had to shout. She had to cry out. She had to make her resistance, non-compliance with the action, as obvious, as blatant as possible. And this is a problem. This is a problem. In our time, we are living in an age of rampant promiscuity. Women consciously or unconsciously sometimes seem to give different mixed messages. Men get mixed messages from women. Sometimes men think that they can get away or do things and that the woman will be agreeable to it, and this is not always the case. And so this results in all kinds of situations. Sometimes a woman is actually raped, but she, in her own mind, she feels guilty about it and feels as if she had been a party to the action. And other times, a man has intercourse with a woman and thinks the woman had some type of agreement with him she was a willing partner, and it turns out that such was not the case. And the numerous incidents of this nature occur, And it is quite obvious from all of these case studies that if the woman had have shouted or had have said no very strongly and even called out, then there would have been no doubt in the minds of anyone. Both the victim and the perpetrator would have been quite clear in their own minds as to what was going on. And so this is an important point that should be known, that females and also even males who are victim of sexual molestation should say no, and they should do so as vehemently as they can. And this should be something that is taking as normal, as obvious. It should be obvious. There's another point of this saying no or calling out that is needed. It is in effect a modicum of resistance. Perhaps a person who is a victim of such an occasion is overcome by panic, by fear, is petrified and cannot move and cannot resist. But if they do so verbally, that too is something psychologically. That is some form, some degree of resistance. This is worth recalling. I once spoke to Rabbi Avraham Feld, and he is an associate of ours who has experience with dealing with the different cases, and social work and so on. And he gave a case, quoted to us a case study concerning Holocaust victims. So we had the Holocaust, and the Germans and the European allies were killing all the Jews, and also treating them with, before they killed them, they were treating them very, very badly, very cruelly, very sadistically, and they would do this to anyone who was Jewish as well as to other people. And anyone just for being Jewish, they would do it to them. And so there were people amongst the Holocaust victims. There were those who resisted and those who did not resist. It didn't really make much difference whether you resisted or you did not resist. The same fate awaited you. The same things happened to the people. The numbers of victims amongst those who resisted and the numbers of victims amongst those who did not resist is about the same statistically. It did not make any difference. But after the war, those who had not resisted had more problems in recovering psychologically than those who did resist. Those who did resist showed a greater resilience. They had less guilt feelings about having, as if the others who had not resisted, they sometimes had guilt feelings as if they had somehow or another been complicit in what had gone on. They had gone along with it by not resisting. And so this too is something to take into consideration. You should resist evil. You should also express your resistance to evil, and you should not be afraid. And you should do what you can with what you are able. So this is what the Bible teaches us. This is what we are taught by our portion. We're also told in 23:2 that those born of an illicit union should not be admitted to the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of their descendants shall be admitted to the assembly of the Lord. Born of an illicit union, in Hebrew is mamzer, sometimes translated as bastard, but this is not the exact case. A bastard in biblical terms is someone who is obligated by the law, or born to some others obligated by the law. In other words, an Israelite under the law, a Jew. And it is the offspring of adultery or incest, and it is quite a complicated matter, which has some bearing on other issues that for those who are interested should look it up. And not only a mamzer was not to be accepted as a full-fledged citizen. So too there were other peoples such as Ammonites and Moabites who were also not to be accepted into the Israelite community even if they wished to join. This says in Deuteronomy 23:3 and 4, no Ammonite or Moabite shall be admitted to the assembly of the Lord, even to the 10th generation. None of their descendants shall be admitted to the assembly of the Lord, because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey out of Egypt, and because they hired against you Balaam the son of Beor from Petor of Mesopotamia to curse you. So Ammonites and Moabites were not to be admitted. And why were they not to be admitted? Because they did not meet you with food and water on your journey out of Egypt. It's considered the task of males. At that time it was considered the task of males to go out with food and water to meet those who were in need of it, especially your own kinfolk. And remember that the Israelites were close kinfolk of the Ammonites and the Moabites. And even so, the Ammonites and Moabites refused to help them, did not come out to help them, which the males amongst the Ammonites and Moabites were obliged to do, and they did not do it. And because of this, they were forbidden to come into the congregation to be accepted as converts or as sojourners amongst the Israelites. They were forbidden, but this prohibition applied only to the males amongst them. Only to the male Moabites and Ammonites were prohibited. For this reason, Ruth was from Moab, and she, as we are told in the book of Ruth was a Moabitess who joined Naomi, her mother-in-law, and went with her, returned with, after her husband had died, returned with her to the area of Bethlehem in Judah, and there she married Boaz, and from Boaz she had a child, and he had a child, and from that dynasty emerged King David. And from King David emerges the future Messiah. So the Messiah himself will come from such a union. And why was Ruth permitted to join the Israelites, to become part of the Israelite people? Because she was a female. Because the females from the Moabites and the Ammonites were permitted, whereas the males were not. And this is understood from the passages itself. It's implied in the biblical passages themselves. But it is also strengthened and confirmed by the sages, by the oral tradition, and is one of the proofs of the oral tradition, amongst numerous others. May God be so bless all of you.